Okay, today my guest is Professor Ajai Gaur. I'll keep my introduction short to maximize our time with him. In the next 30 minutes or so, we'll talk about Ajay as a person, Professor Gaur is a thought leader and an esteemed scholar, and finally is a mentor to many PhD students and junior faculty. For the sake of time, I'll skip many of his accomplishments and give you a very quick snapshot. Professor Gaur is an AIB Fellow. Ajay has co-authored or authored more than 75 journal articles, monograms, case studies, and book chapters. He works on strategic adaptation of emerging market firms during institutional transition, institutional distance between different governance environment, MNCs, ownership strategies, staffing strategies, entry choice in international investments. He has received the Richard Farmer Best Dissertation Award in 2008, the SAMS AIB Best Dissertation Proposal Award in 2006, and the Temple AIB Best Paper Award in 2014. Ajay has served as the president of the Asia Academy of Management for 2 terms, and is currently serving as the editor-in-chief of the Journal of World Business and is a consulting editor for JEPS. Thank you, Ajay, for joining us.
Thank you, Ilgaz. Again, you're doing a wonderful job, and thank you for your service to the IB community.
Thank you. Ajay, what did you want to become when you were a child?
You know, growing up in India, it was not really what you wanted to become, but what your parents wanted to become. And my parents wanted me to join bureaucracy. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. You know, in a socialist India of 1980s, there were just so few choices. And I thought, you know, joining Air Force would be an assured way for me to be able to fly in an aircraft. You know, I was very fascinated with those things. My parents did not approve of this, and I did not particularly like their ideas. So, you know, from that point on, it was really not about what I wanted to become, but what I could not become and what choices were left. But, you know, it's not depressing. I mean, it was not any sad affair. It has been quite a fun ride in eliminating the things that you could not do because of, you know, your own lack of abilities or because of environment and so on.
And what was the worst career choice that they told you that you should follow that you absolutely couldn't possibly do?
Right. So, you know, I should clarify, they were not very much, you know, so bureaucracy was something that they wanted me to join, you know, civil services in India. But beyond that, they actually left me quite open to do the things that I wanted to do. So they did not, you know, push other things on me.
Okay. And how did you choose academia later on?
So both my parents were, you know, school teachers. They retired as school principals. So, you know, there's some bit of, you know, understanding of what it takes to be a teacher, you know, from the very beginning. And I quite liked it, you know, what they were doing. But this came only when I joined the MBA program at Indian Institute of Foreign Trade. You know, IFT as an institution was more of a think tank of Government of India, specializing on issues such as, you know, trade negotiations with World Trade Organization and so on. And I quite liked it, you know, the global political economy issues and things that were discussed. So it was somewhat different, you know, than a typical MBA program. And as I completed my MBA, did my summer training and so on, I again realized that, you know, this was not something I wanted to do in terms of joining a corporate. You know, so at that point, I, you know, wanted to stay at IFT, and I took a teaching position in the institution. So I started teaching at IFT, and as you know, I started teaching, I realized that I had to do a PhD. So that's when I also registered for a PhD, actually in organizational behavior. Again, because I did not, you know, understand the fields in detail. I thought OB would be a very interesting topic, but as I started doing PhD in OB, again, I realized that this is not something that I wanted to do. You know, I got involved in some consulting projects for World Trade Organization, you know, exporting and so on of Indian firms. And I thought IB was very fascinating. So at that point, then, you know, I did complete my first PhD, but then I applied for another one in Singapore. And, you know, that's where I got really into academics and research and so on. Yeah.
And where did you get your PhD?
In Singapore, National University of Singapore. That's where I got the second PhD. My first PhD was from School of Mines in India.
Okay. And about something that is not on your CV that people might find interesting.
Yeah, that's a difficult one. I'm a very open person. My wife actually keeps blaming me. I mean, if it's not on my CV, it's probably on my website or my Facebook page, Instagram page, and so on. But I like one of the things, and again, it might be very common for most people. I love all kinds of sports. I spend significant time watching them. From American football to soccer to everything. Actually, oftentimes I have multiple screens open, because if there are many games coming at the same time, I cannot let go of one against the other. So yeah, I also love traveling, which I guess is true for most AIB members. During the pandemic, I started to learn flying. So yeah, I mean, a few things, but otherwise I'm very routine, regular person.
So this is through a simulator. Is this how you do flying now?
No, I'm doing the those single engine Cessna aircrafts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but actually my daughter pushed me to, because she was very much interested into it. 13-year-old child, so she's learning flying, and I thought I should also learn if she's doing it, and I find it quite adventure type of thing. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, if you stop doing what you're doing today, what's the second best career choice for you?
At this moment, I don't know. There aren't many choices left, because of the path dependency. But if you take out the path dependency aspect, I think I would love to be a sports analyst, football in particular, American football. I really love this game. It's so much of a strategy game as it is power game and so on. And I think I could really do that job, reasonably well. Again, more perhaps as a vocation than a profession. I guess the other thing, again, if you take the path dependency out, would be history. As a child, I was very much interested in, history, not necessarily by choice. I love to read. In my town, there were no libraries. So the only thing really I could get to read were history books. And, because my parents were teachers, I could get history books for different grades. So they were like reading novel and some of history is even, fiction, depending on who writes it. So, so I really became interested in history. And I think, if I have a choice, or if I had to do something else, I'll probably want to become a history teacher in a school, perhaps even. I don't know.
Regrets? Have you got any regrets?
Not really. I think I've really enjoyed the things that I have done, in terms of, again, you make those decisions at that point in time. And in the hindsight, you can, say that maybe I wish I would have, developed some more deep hobbies, learned some sports more, because I love them so much. But yeah, I think I'm pretty happy, with the things that I have done. Not all choices have been good choices, so to your question, perhaps having more focus, even in the work that I did, from my undergraduation in mining engineering, then the MBA, then, OBP. So not all of that was necessarily, from career point of view in the same direction. But then, I enjoy this randomness. So I would not say that I regret those things, but perhaps having more focus would have helped me in some ways. But then certainly there would be costs of having fun in life.
Sure.
So
sure. About failure, what did you learn from your biggest failure?
So one of the things, as I said, I have failed is to become good at any sport I have played, despite having deep interest in many things. I tried many things, and it was difficult to accept, those failures. And I think that's also the biggest learning, to accept and understand my limits, my boundaries, and, enjoy life within those boundaries of what I am capable of doing, yeah.
About last question in the personal portion. What are you most passionate about?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think I really love my work, to be honest. I spend quite a bit of time, doing the things that I'm doing. And that's because, precisely I really enjoy doing the things that I'm doing. Beyond that, as I said, I spend a lot of time, watching and reading about sports, analyzing things, every week before the next week's games start, what should be the lineup in the NFL and so on. I also read a lot about, global politics, which in fact is again related to my work, but even beyond work, the intersection of different aspects of global political economy. As they impact business. Yeah, so I love reading. I love, sports, but yeah.
So let's talk about some research. Let's say you're stranded in a small village and locals don't know anything about you, they are curious. How do you explain your research to people who don't read your work regularly? And how do you explain why your research is important?
Yeah. Yeah, no, actually, I do this often because, a lot of my friends are non-academic, beyond conferences in my regular life. In fact, all of my friends are non-academic. So this explanation is often based on the context of the conversation. Typically, the conversation will start on some issues related to trade and political economy, government shutdown, for example, the expenses and so on at the government level. And then depending on the interest of the audience, I will venture into some of my research. So for example, if I'm in a pub with unknown people, I would say that my research really helps understand what it would take to grow the business of this pub. Could this pub owner do some other stuff that would potentially attract a new segment of customers? Could this pub owner open, other branches in neighboring towns? And, can this model be replicated in other countries? And what would it take for this type of pub or this business to succeed in another context? So, so that is where I think the conversation will start about my research. And obviously, these are important things because, in a pub, it's important for that pub owner to make money.
Of course. So Ajay, about neglected elements in IB research, things that we have covered, but maybe we need to cover more of some of the omitted variables, things that we have understudied.
Yeah.
What do you think about them?
IB research is phenomenon-based. There has been a great deal of work on the context by IB scholars, but I think there's still a lot to do. I think the focus has been more on the external context with the internal organizational context and, micro level of analysis missing to an extent. And this is because of many reasons. The secondary databases on which we rely have limited ability to offer, more nuanced, if I could use the word, understanding of the context. People do not have easy access to the inside of, an organization. And as a result, we lack understanding of the processes and mechanisms underlying the relationships that we study. I think there's a great deal of a scope to make contribution if you're willing to dirty our hands in sort of new data collection and just broadly to understand the issues that we are studying beyond simply looking at the data to find relationships. But as I said, beyond this, IB is a largely phenomenon-based field. And with the fast-paced, technological changes, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and so on, there are no dearth of, very interesting phenomenon to study on any topic, whether you pick up future of work, migration, global value chains, reconfiguration of global value chains, and, even more fundamentally, the M&E as an organization itself. What is going to be the future of M&E in this world where, on the one hand, for example, technology is pushing us to become more globalized, but at the same time, technology is also enabling us to operate in the global environment without necessarily being as globalized. You don't have to have your employees at the same place in order to collaborate. We have learned that during the pandemic. So I think there are lots of, very interesting, IB is, I would say, in a golden period in terms of the type of things that we can study.
True. About creativity in research, what does your mind think of when it wanders in a state of idle curiosity? And how do you come up with interesting papers?
Yeah, to be honest, the luxury of idle mind has been really, rare. I often keep thinking about, the projects that I'm working on, the work that I'm doing with my co-authors, doctoral students, and so on. The next editorial decision that I have to make. But as I said, I also read a lot of very unrelated stuff. History books. I read about politics. I read, novels. And that oftentimes gives me a lot of very interesting ideas. Many of those ideas you cannot implement them right away, but those ideas stick with you. And I often would write, just a paragraph on something that I read, with the hope that someday, there would be some interesting data through which I could potentially, examine these issues. Anthropology. So yeah, there are lots of my ideas primarily, I would say, come from reading very unrelated stuff. In fact, when I start writing my papers, the initial set of references that I write for my own reference are mostly from, very random sources, which I don't even include at a later stage. Yeah.
Interesting. And do you work every day? Do you write every day?
I work every day. Obviously, we don't have a choice. Try to sort of, structure in a way that I'm able to do more justice to, my kids and give them more time. So Sundays, go in watching football. So that's, but yeah, I still would try and find time in the night. I used to write every day for my, about my own research, but I don't get that much time in recent, past few years. But I try to, yeah. I mean, if you're talking of writing from the point of view of research, I'm not writing every day, but, editorial decisions or something. Yeah, so I work every day. Yeah.
Now, you had the best dissertation proposal, you had the best dissertation. So I want to ask you, a PhD student comes to you and asks for the next dissertation, which is going to get these type of awards. Can you give one or two ideas for dissertation in IB for a scholar who is interested in following your footsteps?
Yeah, and that's, I think what I'm going to say is not just true for IB, but social science field as a general. We have to be responsive to the things which are happening in the real world. In the IB field, the global events of past couple of years, and in fact some of the more recent events, they have forced us to rethink the whole rationale behind many issues that we examine in our field. For example, what is the successful model of multinational network-based organizations, or something which is just a very porous and fragile set of connections which can be easily broken and easily reestablished. The roles and responsibilities of multinationals and corporations, beyond making profit, social responsibility, sustainability. So, depending on whether you're interested in micro area or macro area, digitization, there are lots of very interesting topics, sustainability, the technological Cold War, the new technologies which are impacting businesses. Yeah, I think many of these issues we have very superficial understanding, primarily based on what has been written in the media, press, business magazines, but not so much research based. And I think that's where the real ideas can really come out, or potential new avenues for research.
True. About the evolution in the field, from what it was when you were going through the program and what it is right now. What can you say about the evolution of the IB as a field?
I think, and that might be, you see things only from your own time window. So, I'm seeing more of the work which is coming out from the people which were in my own cohort, right? I'm more closely connected with them. But in general, I think IB scholars are becoming more bold, if I could use the word, bold in the issues that they examine, in the approaches that they adopt to study those issues. They are, breaking away from the traditional approaches to scholarship. For example, constantly challenging the assumptions of, what is known, using new data, new methods, there's lots of potential in big data and the associated methods, which many, very emerging scholars have started to look at. And just presenting more diverse viewpoints on the table. I think we have come a long way in, being responsive to the issues of importance rather than always looking at the rear view mirror, which is what, many IB and strategy scholars were often accused of, and rightly so. So I think that is where I see change. People are willing to take risks. People are more open to the opportunities which are available around the world. In a North American model, you have to follow a certain process and a step in order, for example, to get tenure. But people are willing to move to other places where they can pursue their passion in terms of research. I think that is a very welcome change.
Sure.
That to some extent globalization has actually afforded us.
Sure. Ajay, what was the best advice you received when you were going through the PhD program?
I had really very good mentoring. I think my advisor, Andrew, he would always insist on knowing the problems that you are examining. So understanding of the context in which you are doing research, and not just, taking the data and, running regressions on data to, come up with hypotheses and models and so on. But beyond that, I think what is also very important, which I have learned through my own, failed experiences, is to have a lot of patience. I think that's really important in our field. I started a lot of projects, I'll send them out and I'll get rejections and then I'll just, put them aside. I have so many, papers which are totally complete, but, they were rejected a few times. Then I just lost patience with them. And I started on other projects and they're still lying, on my desk. I sometimes pick some of them if I have opportunity to use new data to test those ideas. But I think patience is really important, and going deep into the issues that you're examining is equally important.
I mean, it can be in your current institution or in other institutions or in context that you've seen junior faculty or PhD students run into these problems. What are some of the common mistakes that you see young colleagues make about handling their careers or their research agenda?
I think so. So there are two ways to look at it, and to some extent they might contradictory. One, I would say, is to really think what kind of a scholar you want to be. Based again on your own understanding of yourself, your capabilities, and how far you want to go. So, as a junior faculty member or a doctoral student, we really have to think very hard. Where do we want to see ourselves in 5-10 years? Because that would, to an extent determine, for example, the type of dissertation you want to do, the amount of time you want to spend in collecting a new data set versus just, running your models based off existing databases, and both approaches are fine. There is no, I'm not putting a, value judgment on either of them. But that would be the first step. So, spending some time, and when I'm saying some time, 3 to 6 months or even a year, to patiently thinking about where do you want to take yourself. And of course, you're not just sitting idle when you're thinking, of these things. But I think, equally important, or perhaps even more important in general terms, is not to become too serious. And that's why I said it's perhaps, somewhat contradictory. Sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. I think, humility is very important, but not being serious also means, you pick up a subject, you work on it, and if it's not working out, it's all right. That's not the end of life. You can pick up something else and, you can start on, some other project, some other topics. Sometimes we get quite a bit stuck on, the ideas, the very first idea or first few sets of ideas that we have, that we are not able to break from them. The data set that we collected over a year, if it's not working out, move on. And that's what I mean by, not being too serious about who we are, because in the end, it's also about having fun. And, I think if we stop taking ourselves a little bit less seriously, we can probably enjoy the process a lot more.
Sure. Along the way, which skills were more difficult to develop, in your opinion? I mean, everyone goes through literature, everyone goes through the methods, but there are other skills that are needed. In your opinion, what is more difficult, more valuable?
Yeah, so IB is an interdisciplinary field, where we examine a lot of issues based on the phenomenon that we observe. Now, if you want to make really solid contributions, on these issues, one needs to have deep understanding of one of the core disciplines. I think perhaps because of the structure of our departments, the training that many doctoral students receive, they often lack such disciplinary expertise or focus, which then makes it somewhat difficult. I would not say impossible, very difficult, but somewhat challenging to make novel contributions. So even if the doctoral program does not afford you to have deep focus in a disciplinary area, it's very much possible to do on your own. So that would be that is something that I would advise people. I mean, if you are interested in institutional theory, for example, then don't just read the papers which are published in IB journals. Go and read the sociology journals to understand if that's the approach you want to take. Go and read the econ journals if you want to understand the econ-based approach. It's I think having the deep knowledge of key disciplines from which we borrow our theories becomes very important when we are trying to make novel theoretical contributions.
Perfect, thank you. The last question. What's the question that I should have asked you but haven't?
Lots of things. There are lots of things I struggle with, and you could have asked any of those. Work-life balance, my future plans. I don't have answer to any of those questions, unfortunately. As I said, I struggle with those things on a daily basis. On work-life balance, really, there's no balance. It's all work, at least for us in our family, which works fine, because we understand what is needed. And my kids so far have been very, understanding of the work that we do. If I'm sitting in my office, they would, not come and bother me. But I think, that's really an important aspect to take out time for yourself and, to have fun in life, because academic profession can be very lonely. It often is very lonely. And for that reason, having good relationships with, for example, your co-authors, so that, for instance, when you're discussing work, you're not just discussing work, you're also having fun. I think that becomes very important, because we can, then take out some of our stress in our work environment as well. Future plans, a lot of things I want to do. I really enjoy being in this field and being in the academic profession, and I think I want to contribute to the field. I'm already doing a lot of service, but I think I do have some, good ideas that would help, scholarship around the world, connecting people who are relatively disadvantaged, even in our academy. I mean, if you look at AIB, the AIB membership is just about 3,000 people. Before the pandemic, we started Academic Society, Emerging Market Society, which had very similar plans, about the things which many associations are doing now, which is to use technology to connect people, who do not have access to stuff. For example, they can't come to AIB. So yes, so that's already happening, which is very nice. But I think there's still a lot of scope to, bring a scholarship from these relatively less connected areas to the mainstream. And I would really like to, make some efforts there and contribute to the community. Yeah.
Perfect. Ajay, thank you so much for this interview. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience will agree with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilgaz. Appreciate it.